In this video, I'm going to talk about why I'm an anarcho-capitalist, an individualist, and a voluntaryist. Now, all of these three names mean the same thing, they're just a different name. And I'm also going to talk about what they are. So, a couple days ago, I was debating with a friend of mine on the topic of government. He brought up taxation, and I told him that we should get rid of it altogether. And then he asked me, how would the government work then? I told him that would be the point. I told him societies don't need the state to be successful. In fact, they'd be better off without them. He argued that a society without government would not work. So, what exactly is individualism? When you look it up on Google, it states, anarcho-capitalism is a political philosophy and school of anarchist thought that advocates the elimination of the state in favor of self-ownership, private property, and free markets. When people think of anarchy, they think of a chaos and a society without order. But this is an untrue stereotype taught to us from birth. We're not taught that we could exist in a world without rulers. When I think of anarcho-capitalism, I think of self-ownership, a free market, free from the chains of regulation and involuntary taxation. I think of mutual agreements. I think of the non-aggression principle, the NAP. The non-aggression principle is the rule that means every individual has the right to self-defense if harm is enacted on them or their property by another individual. This includes theft. So no individual has the right to force you to do anything. And if they purposely break the non-aggression principle, they can expect proportional retaliation from the victim of the crime. This means that a crime needs to have a victim to be a valid crime. You're free to do anything unless it directly harms another individual. The reason I'm an individualist is because I'm forced to pay taxes to an organization I do not support. My tax dollars are going towards other countries like Israel that violate human rights. They're going to the military to fight wars that I am against, where innocents are frequently slaughtered for oil. My tax dollars are going towards welfare. Part of my salary is taken away from me to go to another person that puts no effort into bettering his life because he'll just get another check in the mail every month. My tax dollars are going towards government that bombs countries for violating human rights while simultaneously violating human rights themselves. The United States government uses torture to get information they want, and they spy on their citizens for no real reason, both of which are human rights violations. My tax dollars are going towards public police that murder countless citizens. How many deaths do you see from a private security compared to the public police that we are forced to support? I'll tell you right now, the public police has killed more. We pay taxes that go towards a public education system that has no protection for kids, has no real-world education that'll be valuable to them later in life, and forces you to pay even if you don't send your own children. The state primarily benefits those with elite status, and we are being forced to support them with the threat of being thrown into cages. Then they tell us that we should be grateful for taxation because they use that to provide us services that benefit us that we didn't ask for. That's like if a guy comes into my house, holds a gun to my head, steals my money, then uses that money to buy a lawnmower and cut my grass. Just like the mafia that will force businesses to pay a fee, then tell the business owners that they should feel grateful because they're the ones that protect the business. A quote from one of my favorite philosophers says, "If taxation without consent is not robbery, then any band of robbers have only to declare themselves a government, and all their robberies are legalized." That's Lysander Spooner. Now I commonly get asked, why don't you just support a small government and vote for the right people that'll try and make the government smaller? And I reply that taxation is still going to be involved, and governments don't stay small for long. The United States government started off small, and the main reason was to protect our pre-existing rights. But now, the Constitution is ignored. That Constitution was set in place to prevent a big government. Now, the Second Amendment is thrown out the window. The Second Amendment states that the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. Yet, we have very strict gun controls now. I believe that as long as there is a government, that it will always spiral out of control. Those are the reasons for which I am an voluntarist, and why I am against my government and all government. I envision a world in which people don't need the government's permission to do things. Because what we have now is not freedom. It is licensed freedom. You need government permission for almost everything you do. To drive, to serve food, to cut hair, to hunt, to fish, to drive a motorcycle, and that's just to name a few. I think that if a population got together to practice this ideology, that it would thrive and even potentially surpass other governments. Remember, your rights are not a privilege or a gift granted to you by the government. They are pre-existing, and it's up to us to enforce those rights if the state steps out of line and treads on them.